listening to the Labor Notes podcast, the weekly show from Labor Notes on rank and file news and organizing tactics. I'm pod co-host Danielle Smith, organizer at Labor Notes.
And I'm pod co-host Natascha Elena Uhlmann, a staff writer at Labor Notes.
Welcome back to the Stewards Corner, our dimly lit spot at the library where Natascha and I wear matching smoking jackets and hold up our Labor Notes magazines open to the Stewards Corner page while rain fogs up the windows.
That could be you and your coworkers. Subscribe at labornotes.org/subscribe. Smoking jackets not included.
The Stewards Corner is also our long-running column in the Labor Notes magazine, where stewards and organizers describe strategies to build better connections on the shop floor, to defend against discipline, and to keep building power.
But don't hit pause if you're not a steward. Our episode today on workplace safety has something for everyone. It's based on a piece we ran titled Workplace Safety is Not a Game. It was adapted from the UE Steward, a project by the United Electrical Workers Education Department that publishes how-to articles. We've linked the piece in the episode description.
And we have our organizer, Kari Thompson, here with us again to talk about it. Welcome back, Kari, and happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Management will do just about anything to avoid doing the obvious, which is just to listen to their workers, even going as far as to organize workplace safety games. Yes, games, sometimes with cash prizes, which seems to be an almost bizarre extreme. Kari, could you tell us a bit about what these are and maybe why this is a messed up way to talk about workplace safety?
Sure. So the goal of these games is to discourage workers from reporting safety incidents that happen on the job. And the way it will work is management will say, hey, everybody, we're going to have a drawing every week for $50 cash or a gift card if we happen to not have any safety incidents at work that week. And that's great, right? Like everybody wants a little cash bonus. And if your department has a safety incident, well, none of you get to have your name put into the hat for the drawing. And if there are too many safety incidents that week, let's say there are 3, then nobody gets to get put in the drawing for the money. Or maybe sometimes it might not be money. Maybe it's a, prize like a new flat screen TV or tickets to a ball game or something like that, right? And the idea is to give workers an incentive not to just work safely, which is what the boss would say, but to not report safety problems when they happen on the job. And that's really dangerous because it's very common for there to be a particular problem area in a workplace. And when one safety incident happens there, it's likely that another will occur in the same spot. So when these go unreported, then they also go unfixed. And that makes workers the scapegoat for the safety problems instead of making this something that management needs to be fixing. Unfortunately, workplace safety is still something that's really important. You might think like, oh, well, those problems that existed with factories back in the turn of the 20th century, that doesn't exist anymore. There's no longer children working in plants, although we know, of course, that has happened recently. But workplace safety is still a real issue. So I live in Pittsburgh, and just outside of Pittsburgh in August and Clairton, there's still a Coke manufacturing plant. This is part of the steel production process. And there was an explosion there that killed 2 workers, and sent 10 workers to the hospital and injured many more. And this is in a facility that has a union. It's a steelworkers plant, has been for a long time. And the steelworkers constantly raise safety issues going on at this plant. And yet this happened anyways, because it's a really dangerous line of work. And this isn't to say that any safety games like we're talking about today were being played specifically at that plant. But it is just to reiterate that this is a real thing that workers still need to have on their mind. And it's a place where unions can really make a difference. And it's not just about pay and benefits, right? This is about the working conditions that we come to work under.
Yeah, can you say more about the effects these kinds of games can have on workers, and what can stewards do to inoculate members ahead of time?
One of the biggest problems with these kinds of games or any other sort of safety incentive bonus is that it really pits workers against each other. So it makes it so that workers pressure each other not to report incidents because everybody wants a chance at that prize or whatever the incentive is. And this is just one more way that bosses divide workers, right? And we know from our Labor Notes Secrets series that bosses rely on division as one way to get the upper hand in our workplaces. So this is a really clever way for them to do it. It also really makes the problem of workplace safety something that the workers are supposed to be responsible for instead of the bosses. And that's just not okay because they're the ones who own the facility. It doesn't just have to be a manufacturing plant. It could be a hospital. It could be a school. They are the ones who are responsible for that space. So it's really important if bosses try to introduce a new program like this that stewards right away try to tell their membership, hey, we should not participate in this. We should not let the boss divide us in this way. And we should actually be more diligent than ever about reporting safety incidents because apparently the boss suddenly cares about them. So we can say, no, we don't really want your $50 or $100 bonus. We want you to spend the money it takes to actually fix the problems that we've been telling you exist here. And it's really important to do this as much ahead of time as possible so workers don't start getting their hopes up that, hey, they're going to go get whatever that prize is.
So, as you've been saying, something that's kind of underlying these games is this idea that we don't want workers to, report incidents or that workers reporting the incidents would be problematic, but wouldn't reporting these incidents be a good thing? It would create a record of what went wrong, when and why, and then that would be information that management could use to identify problem areas and patterns and come up with solutions. So, why is it that the bosses wouldn't want to do that?
Because that would cost them money. And they don't really want to spend any money on workers that they don't have to. So having these incidents documented would then also create liability for themselves. All of these businesses have some kind of insurance that's covering them. And sometimes those insurance companies ask to see a copy of the safety log or of any kind of incident reporting log. And the bosses don't want more things on the list. And they ultimately don't really care about our bodies as workers. What they care about is what we are producing for them from which they can profit. Or if we're in a public space, maybe they care about what kind of budget they're reporting to the broader electorate or to some kind of, maybe it's a superintendent or maybe it's a division chief of some kind that's looking at some sort of bottom line that's related to taxpayer dollars. And either way, they have this incentive to try to keep the lid on their expenses. And so they don't want workers to be honest about the kinds of problems that would take money to fix. Even though, a stitch in time saves 9, right? They could do something now that could help prevent future problems, could help even make things run smoother for themselves, could maybe even increase profits, but they often don't really care about that if it's going to cost them money right now. We do have a workplace law that applies, the Occupational Safety and Health Act that workers fought for. Our colleague Jenny covered this earlier in the year in the Labor Notes cover of, these are among the laws that workers said are really important and we fought for and won them. And it requires accident reporting, among other things. And it's really important that we make use of this law to the extent that we still have it so that we can show why we still need to have it on the books. OSHA inspectors have always been underfunded. There aren't enough of them to go around to get to every workplace, but that doesn't mean we should stop documenting this whenever there are safety incidences at work, because we just like a contract that we have with an employer, it's only as good as it's enforced. So OSHA will only continue to matter if workers use it, and we'll only be able to get it stronger and address contemporary workplace safety problems if we document what those things are. So for now, it's still really important that our employers are filling out those OSHA logs. And it's really important that union stewards are the ones who are speaking up about those workplace problems.
Management might try to argue that the point of these games is to take the fear out of workplace safety and to learn about potentially serious things in a lower temperature and engaging environment. But as we've talked about, these games aren't it. Is there a way to do something like this without insulting workers?
Sure. The best thing to do is to have your own union-led safety committee. This is a great opportunity to engage interested union members who maybe aren't ready for an elected office within the union, or maybe they didn't win their steward's election, but they still want to be involved. And the union can make their own safety committee. Some unions also bargain for a safety committee that's recognized by the boss, and sometimes that can be really useful because you can get work time to go through and do safety checks, to do walkthroughs of the space. But you do have to be careful of those kinds of boss-led safety committees because the boss might set their own agenda. So it's really important for unions to have their own safety committees and have their own agenda where they're addressing the complaints that they've been hearing from their own coworkers. So schedule your own walkthroughs of your workplace. Do your own surveys to reach out to members about their potential safety issues. Ask people before negotiations, how much does it actually cost to get a new pair of safety shoes right now, or a new set of gloves that are appropriate for your work? So that when you go to the bargaining table, you are asking for an amount of money that will actually provide the tools that people need. And again, this isn't just in manufacturing settings. This applies in office spaces and schools and other kinds of workplaces where there are also safety problems. There's a great case study of teachers finding mold in their classrooms in our Secrets of a Successful Organizer book, and the way they use that as an organizing opportunity to rally for their schools to get cleaned up. So any kind of safety problem is also an organizing opportunity to get people on board with an issue that has a clear fix. Sometimes when we're coming up with organizing issues, it can be hard to figure out, what is the thing that would actually fix this problem? And more often than not, when it comes to health and safety issues, workers actually do know what the solution is. And so they can put that forward and know whether or not the boss is actually doing the thing that will help them to have a safer workplace. Another educational tool that's really great to introduce to workers, whether or not they're on this health and safety committee, is the hierarchy of controls. This is something that came up in the context of COVID. It's an inverted triangle that talks about the way to eliminate hazards in a workplace or anywhere in the environment. And the first thing to do is to eliminate the hazard altogether. So in the case of mold, right, it needs to be eliminated out of the building. In the case of COVID, we couldn't do that. Once it was here, it was here. So what's the next thing that can be done to help workers stay safe? So substitution, this comes into play when there's some kind of material substance that's hazardous, and can it be replaced with something else? After that comes engineering controls. This is something that came into play in COVID, right? So introducing air filtration systems that could keep the air cleaner for people. And it's not just for that particular illness that you might want to advocate for something like that. Maybe you live in a community with particularly high airborne pollution and you want the office air to be cleaner. Perhaps you work in an office setting where there's some kind of substance being used in a printer or 3D printer even that is emitting an odor that might be hazardous. And is there a better air filtration system that could be put in place that could help people? After that comes administrative controls. So this is changing the way people work, like staggering when people come in or increasing the number of times that maintenance is performed. Maybe it's something like instituting a cleaning protocol that people have to use that didn't exist before. And the very last piece of this hierarchy of controls is personal protective equipment. And that's, those are the masks, infamously. This is also steel-toed boots, safety shoes, right? This is having to wear earplugs when you're in a loud work environment, or a face shield when you are doing a welding task or something else like that, right? But that's really the last line of defense. And stewards can advocate for better personal protective equipment that the boss pays for, but they should also be looking further up in that hierarchy of controls for other ways to make workplace safety improved that will affect the whole group and doesn't go back to putting the responsibility just on one particular worker to do the right thing as they were getting ready for their shift by, putting those gloves on that are really uncomfortable and they don't like wearing because it's actually harder to feel inside the gloves, right? Well, what else could we do to make that environment better so that they didn't have to just rely on wearing one particular piece of personal protective equipment?
Anything else you think people should know about workplace safety?
One really important thing is that workplace safety is a mandatory subject of bargaining under the NLRA, and in most states where there is the ability to bargain a contract, that also includes workplace health and safety. So make sure you're thinking about this as you prepare for contract negotiations. Do you have language in your contract now? If so, are you using it? And whether or not it's there, could it be better? Is it addressing your present workplace conditions?
Thanks so much, Kari. That's our show. Rate us or leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. If you're listening to us on Podbean at labornotespodcast.podbean.com, download our episode. Our next What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart workshop will be on Tuesday, October 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern, and our next Stewards workshop on the topic of just cause will be on Monday, October 27th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We also have our next secret series on Saturdays, November 8th and 15th from 12 to 3 p.m. So that will be 2 3-hour sessions instead of 3 2-hour sessions. And if you're on the West Coast or work evenings, that's a great one for you to attend. Also, be sure to check out our New Orleans Troublemaker School. That's going to be on December 6th. You can register for these trainings at labornotes.org/events.
The Labor Notes podcast is produced by Danielle Smith, Sindhu Sundar, and myself. Our title music was written and performed by our coworker, Keith Brower Brown. See you next week. Solidarity, y'all.